Tony Cartledge. I wondered if you could share your experience on what happens to people's spiritual aspirations once they come to terms with the fact they were in a cult and they wake up to the fact they once believed in nonsense. Do you see any patterns, or are these continued journeys as varied as the personalities and needs of each person? Do they go traditional religion or alt spirituality? Do they go classic or new age? Or none at all? And what has happened to your spiritual aspirations? I might not be too far off the mark to guess that you have gone secular with critical thinking, but do you still have any spiritual hankerings? And what form do they or might they take? What a fun question, Tony. Thank you for asking me about this. And it really is kind of from my own direct observation of a lot of different people coming out of a lot of different groups over the years. I will say that, unfortunately, it is quite varied. And I have not done studies on this, and I wouldn't dare try to guess at what percentages of people go in or go back to their groups or go into other religious groups, and are those groups, how similar are they to the ones they came out of? Is there any kind of markers or indicators for where or how to determine, is a person going to go polar opposite, or are they going to try to find something similar? Because you're going to find both. You're going to find all kinds of things here. And you can see this, of course, very prominently in the atheist world, especially the online atheist world, where people get pretty activist about it. And it's perfectly natural. Janja Lalich has even talked about how when somebody comes out of a cult situation, they get a little bit of a savior complex. They really want to do something about this group they used to be part of, and they want to like make an impact and either, markedly, substantively hurt that group or push back on the influence and power of that group, or they want to warn everybody else about it. And you see that kind of behavior, and that's very prominent in the, like I said, the online atheist world, where you have a lot of people in that world who have come out of deep religious, fundamentalist type homes or overbearing authoritarian kind of situations, or they felt traumatized or lied to, and so they feel justified in pushing back quite hard against organized religion or against their particular brand of it. And then, of course, you have people who come out who then kind of re-examine their religious views or their spiritual views and reframe it and look at it in a different light. And here I can point to somebody like Leah Remini, who came out of Scientology and had grown up in a Catholic kind of home. I think her mother had come from a Catholic tradition before they got into Scientology, and that happened pretty young for Leah. So there wasn't years of Catholic dogma or tradition there. But when she came out of Scientology, that's the direction her and her family went, as I understand it. I'm not speaking for her. It's just my understanding of her is that she has kind of gone back into a Catholic belief set. And, and then that's fine for her. So you will find lots of different examples of lots of different experiences with this. So I feel on much more firm ground when I start talking about myself in this regard, and I've kind of been all over the place with it. When I first got out of Scientology, to say I was experiencing an existential crisis would be a very massive understatement. I mean, you don't come out of a group of decades of thinking that you are an immortal spiritual being who is never going to die. I mean, you come out of something like that and have to deal with the stark reality that there is zero evidence for such a belief, and that belief had come from a pathological control freak. I mean, this is not good. And of course, Hubbard was, also pathologically lying all the time. So nothing that he ever said about himself or his work could be taken at face value. I had to suddenly, fact check everything. And that put a real big damper on my willingness to believe in spiritual things. What does the word spiritual even mean? I mean, I brought this up in a podcast a few weeks ago. I mean, it doesn't really mean much of anything as a word, because the concept is so varied across so many different belief sets, and everybody's got a kind of their own idea of it, including me. I've got a very clear idea of what spirituality means for me, but that belief is very grounded in a Scientology viewpoint. It would be very hard for me to think otherwise about spirituality because of the years and years of indoctrination. And Hubbard was not, kind of loosey-goosey about his ideas about spirituality. He said very, very exact, specific things about, not only what spirituality is, but how it manifests itself, its relationship to the physical universe, its history in and before being involved in the physical universe. So a pretty hardcore grounding in this. And I have to, and prying myself out of that point of view has been, a work in progress, as you guys know. So, okay, so now we come to, well, where have I gone? Well, at first I kind of pendulum swung way off of that and went, well, what can I believe? Well, I can believe in the things I can verify. That's what I can believe. I was very, very tender, about belief. And for the first few years after leaving Scientology, I didn't want to hear anything about spirituality. I wasn't interested because I knew and had and kept learning about just how awful this subject can be in the hands of con men. And there are no shortage of con men in and out of religion who are trying to sell you a piece of blue sky, as John Atack says. And people buy it. People buy it in droves. And I watched this behavior after coming out of Scientology and knowing how bad belief can twist your worldview and corrupt your intent. And I looked at all of that activity and I went, hell no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's crazy. Those people are deluded. It is sad. It is tragic. They are gullible. They're being taken advantage of. I don't want to have anything to do with that. And I feel really sorry for those people that they have those emotional needs that they have to grasp straws, given to them by con men. I mean, outright con men. I am not talking about what you probably experience in your day-to-day experience of religion. I'm talking about the Joel Osteens of the world, these televangelists and these snake oil salesmen who use religion like a cudgel to beat people about their, personal sin and degraded state and how they have to offer up their money to Jesus to be saved. And I've watched old people be taken advantage of and young people be taken advantage of and lives be ruined over this. And I just think that's horrible. So I can't support anything like that. And that's the very worst that organized religion has to offer. But I've come to learn over time, as the years have rolled on and as I've gotten more educated, that's not all there is to the picture of organized religion. And it would be unfair to paint the entire subject with that kind of corrupt brush of malice and ill intent and gullibility and con men, because not everybody who gets into this or goes to seminary or becomes a minister or preacher or pastor or counselor or whatever, not all of them are bad people, right? But it took me a while to get back to that place where I could sort of start thinking more nuanced about the whole topic and engage with apologists and academics at a higher level than the YouTube arguments that go on in the atheist world about how, the counter apologetics, which are fine, but tend to kind of dumb everything down. There are much higher things to talk about and much more interesting and deep philosophical concepts to talk about when you look at religion and our belief and mythology and how it feeds into our morality and our culture and our society. And anybody who's, I've come to realize now that reducing religion down to a set of ideas is pretty reductionist. It's a little bit too simple of a look. There's a lot more involved in religion than just a set of ideas. And this is again how the atheist online community tends to deal with this subject. And I get it. I understand why, but I'm saying that there is more to it than that. And you can engage at whatever level you want to with it. And I think that as people, I think me and a lot of other people who've come out of cultic experiences get real curious about this stuff, do find out more about it, do have to sort of resort for ourselves what makes sense and what doesn't. Do we want to be even part of a group again? I am at the place where I am not at all interested in joining any kind of spiritual group or any group that is professing to have some kind of, truth claim about the reality of the metaphysical universe. You know what I mean? I'm not interested. I don't care. I've just been spoiled on too many snake oil salesmen selling too much nonsense, and at all levels of our society, for me to just go, yeah, okay, this is the group that has their finger on the pulse of the truth, and they know what's what, and they got it over everybody else. No way. I'm not. No, thank you. I have a bit more practical, pragmatic sort of worldview about things like that. So I tend to still sort of, no, thank you. But that all being said, I have been thinking quite a bit about the subject of life and death and mortality and our existence and the nature of life itself. And my continually unanswered question, science doesn't have an answer to this. Religion's answers to this thus far have been nothing but unsatisfying to me. And the answer I'm looking for is the question, why life? Not what is life doing, not how did life evolve, not, what are all the interesting intricacies and consequences of life, but why? Why does it exist in the first place? Any life. Ants, amoebas, us, all of it. Why does it exist? And trying to find the answer to that question has been more fruitful for me and has led me down more interesting holes and rabbit holes and reading and education and stuff than anything else I've run into so far. So that's been my pursuit, and you could call that a spiritual quest or a life kind of quest. I don't know what those answers are going to eventually end up being, but I think the journey itself at this point is what I'm having fun doing, and being open-minded, but not so open, of course, that my brain's going to leak out, as always reliable Carl Sagan liked to say. Okay, so that's kind of how I approach this stuff now, and I try not to be dogmatic. I try not to make it my business to tell other people what to believe about things. I don't think that's really my place, and I don't think it's really proper when it comes to, matters of, deep philosophical issues and religious issues. I mean, people should be able to make up their own minds about that stuff. It's, again, as I've said many times, and I will continue to say, it is certain religious people's ego and arrogance and conceit that they can now tell me how to live my life based on their beliefs, where I start running into some very, very serious problems. And that's where all of our social conflicts come from on that. So anyway, there you go. I hope that was illuminating in some fashion. It was, but that's my answer.